For the very first time in this channel's history, I am previewing a college football playoff national championship game, and this one has the potential to be one of the best in history.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Bully ball, physicality, toughness, running game, great defense. All words that describe the Michigan Wolverines, of course, led by Jim Harbaugh. Speed, explosiveness, best wide receiver room, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, a Heisman Trophy finalist, yards, points, all terms that describe the Washington Huskies, of course, led by Kalen DeBoer. It's the contrast of styles that make this game so darn intriguing. And I think whichever style dictates the flow of the game, that team and that style could be hoisting the trophy when all is said and done in Houston, Texas on Monday night. The year was 1987. The legendary Gorilla Monsoon said, "The irresistible force meets the immovable object," inside the Pontiac Silverdome at WrestleMania 3 when describing the matchup between Andre the Giant and the immortal Hulk Hogan. And when Washington has the ball, you have a very similar matchup. This is strength versus strength. It's as good as it gets on the offensive side of the ball when you talk about Washington, and it's as good as it gets on the defensive side of the ball when you talk about the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan had a really good day, especially in the first half, getting pressure on Jalen Milroe. And they did a really good job at getting pressure by twists, stunts, and all sorts of things schematically by Jesse Minter to confuse that Alabama offensive line. Folks, Michigan is not going to confuse Washington's offensive line. There is a reason why that Husky front won the Joe Moore Award as the best offensive line in college football, is because they protect that diamond back there. They protect Michael Penix Jr. better than anybody else protects their quarterback. They allowed the fourth least amount of sacks in college football this season. And in my Sugar Bowl preview, I talked about those two big boys, those two studs, Murphy and Sweat on the Texas defensive line. Well, Texas combined for a grand total of 0 sacks within that game. But let's call it as it is. Michigan needs to get pressure on Michael Penix Jr. because if Penix is able to sit back there and he's able to be comfortable and he's on schedule, he's going to pick you apart, or at least he's going to have the potential to pick you apart. When that has happened this season for the Washington Huskies, it has not gone well for the opposing defense. There's going to have to be a relationship of sorts between this Michigan pass rush and the defensive backs, right? Because these DBs are going to be challenged. They have not seen a group of wide receivers because no other group of wide receivers really exists like this in all of college football. You could talk about Ohio State, but as an offense, this is something that Michigan has not seen all year long. And the same could be said for the Washington Huskies. This is a defense in the Michigan Wolverines like they have not seen all season long. Michigan needs to get pressure. Look, I'm not saying they need to get 5 sacks or 6 sacks like they did against the Alabama Crimson Tide, but at the very least, you need to get him moving, even though he's really good at shifting the pocket, right, and kind of dancing a little bit to the right, to the left, stepping up, whatever he needs to do, and throwing. But you need to shorten the time of comfort for Michael Penix Jr. within this one. I'm very curious to see how Jesse Minter is exactly going to dial this one up. Right, watch out for some delayed blitzes in this game where it looks like we're going back into coverage, but then one, maybe two guys kind of come a second or two late to get pressure on Michael Penix Jr. after the offensive line maybe identifies things pre-snap. But that also depends on these Michigan defensive backs, the Will Johnsons, the Mikey Sainristills, the Josh Wallaces, etc. of the world, in being really good in coverage in the first second, 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, so that Michael Penix Jr. can't just deliver the ball quickly before that delayed blitz gets there. It would not surprise me if early in this game, Ryan Grubb tests Michigan down the field, especially with the deep ball. No one makes more explosive plays. No one is better at going down the field than the Washington Huskies. They proved it. They had a deep shot early in that game against Texas that set up their first score. And Michigan, I said it in my preview when I was talking about the Alabama offense. There was really two things that you needed to contain and stop on Alabama. It was the QB run game of Jalen Milroe, and it was Alabama going down the field to guys like Bond and Burton. When Alabama tried to go deep a couple of times, these Michigan corners, these Michigan DBs, were right in the hip pocket of these Alabama wide receivers. Newsflash, it's going to be just a little bit more of a challenge against guys like Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk. That is a matchup that I am just drooling over. That is a matchup that I cannot wait to see. When it comes to this matchup, when the Huskies have the football, it's strength on strength. And folks, this is as good as a matchup as you are going to get when you take a look at the number one defense for Michigan and the number one offense for the Washington Huskies. Now, we talked about that defense, those 11 guys for the Michigan Wolverines and how much they are going to be tested against this great Washington offense. But folks, there's a second defense that Michigan might need, that might be their best defense overall, and it's their offense, because this Wolverine offense could be the best defense going up against the Washington Huskies. Ball control, time of possession. The more you can keep Michael Penix Jr. on the sideline, the more you can block downhill, the more you can road grade, the more you can establish the bully ball that the Michigan Wolverines are so well known for, the more success you're going to have and the greater potential to win that you're going to have for the Michigan Wolverines. Long drives, wearing down this Washington defense, I think is going to be extremely key. Let this offensive line eat. We know these Michigan offensive lines love to road grade. They love to block downhill, right? These two teams have won the last 3 Joe Moore Awards as the best offensive line in college football. And I think they've won it. Michigan, right? The 2 before this, and then Washington this year, they've won it for very different reasons. And Michigan, get back to that. Or just keep doing it, because there's nothing to get back to, because we know the identity, of course, that Michigan has. And when you continue to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball, eventually the Huskies are going to have to creep up more numbers to try to stop this run. And it's going to be the timing from Michigan offensive coordinator Sherrone Moore for the play fake. And then to go downfield to guys like Colston Loveland up the seam, maybe on a safety or a linebacker, or to hit Roman Wilson. How about Tyler Morris, right? Made a big play. Maybe even Samaj Morgan, Cornelius Johnson. The timing of that play call from Sherrone Moore is going to be very, very important. When is he going to pull the trigger? And can J.J. McCarthy make those throws at that particular time? If Michigan can control the time of possession, if they can control the line of scrimmage, and I think they have a pretty good chance to do so, that puts more pressure on Washington to score a touchdown every single time they go out of the field. But folks, I think we know they can score a touchdown every time they go out of the field. But it is going to be more difficult going up against this number 1 ranked Washington defense. Let's talk about the red zone for a minute, because if you watched that Sugar Bowl, you saw Washington, right? You get out to a lead, you get out to a 10-point lead, and all of a sudden, late in that third quarter, early in that fourth quarter, they were kicking more field goals than scoring touchdowns. Michigan is second in the country in red zone defense. Check this. Teams have scored 16 of 23 times when they've gotten into the red zone against the Michigan Wolverines. Out of those 16 conversions, just 3 have been passing touchdowns. Okay, Washington can get big plays. And let's be honest, they're probably going to get some big plays between the 20s in this game. But when they get into the red zone, they've got to be able to finish against the Michigan Wolverines. Maybe Dylan Johnson, Kalen DeBoer says he should be good to go. If you're Dylan Johnson, you're not sitting on the bench in this game. You're not dressed in street clothes for this game. So maybe Ryan Grubb offensively throws more Dylan Johnson in the red zone to maybe mix things up in the red zone as well. But if Michigan can kind of do what Texas did, kind of hold them to field goals, and then they convert with touchdowns in some of their longer drives, take more time off the clock, that could be a check mark and advantage for the Michigan Wolverines as well. Washington is in the 70s in red zone defense. 21 of their 42 red zone scores have been allowed on the ground. And we know how good Blake Corum is at finishing drives. When Michigan gets into the red zone, they are going to try to pound the football. Washington has given up a fair amount of scores in the red zone on the ground as well. If you're Washington, I think you definitely want to try to keep them outside of the red zone, try to hold Michigan to more field goals, of course, throughout this game. What a game this is going to be. I could sit here and talk about this one till I'm maize and blue or purple and gold in the face. But my final thoughts on this one are this. I see what Washington has on the offensive side of the ball. Washington's not going to get shut down, folks. For as good as Michigan is on the defensive side of the ball, Washington just has too much talent. They have too much weapons, and that offensive line, boy, that is the key, man. That is the key. For as much talent as they have at the skill positions, that offensive line might be the biggest key to this story for the University of Washington. Michigan is going to give up some things on defense. It's a matter of just how much. Can they make this an average game for Washington, which is 350 yards through the air? It's all about containment in this one for the University of Michigan. But then again, I like Michigan's matchup. To be physical, to be dominant at the line of scrimmage against this Washington defense. Now, the Washington front, of course, you got Braylon Trice and others up there, has been a little bit tougher and better, I think, than people give it credit for. But as I said in the beginning, this one's going to come full circle. Whoever can impose their style on this football game is probably going to be hoisting that trophy when all is said and done in Houston, Texas. Folks, I cannot wait for this matchup. Styles make fights, and this one's going to be one hell of a fight.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.